How's it going, everyone? This is Wenbo. Today we have very special guest join us. Welcome to Derek Elliott. And I'm so excited to have Derek to share his 3D knowledge and business insight with us today. And during this first interview or slash podcast, we'll be talking about Derek's 3D animation business, his art creation process, some insight of 3D in general, and also we need to get some good advice for 3D beginners from Derek. So we'll be making sure you stick around until the end of this videos, and don't forget to follow Derek on YouTube or Instagram if you haven't done so. I highly question about this thing, but let's get started. Hello, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well, Wenbo. How about yourself?
Good. I'm super excited. You see, I'm pumped.
Yes.
So let's start with very first questions. Like just briefly talk about your 3D background and how you get started in this field of 3D art and education and so on. In case somebody don't know you, I assume highly doubt.
Yeah.
But,
Well, thank you for joining. If you don't know me, or if you do, regardless. But yeah, I guess as far as kind of how I got into 3D, I mean, like many people, I first sort of discovered it through movies and video games, and I specifically remember seeing the breakdown for like Jurassic Park when it was made, and thinking like, oh, that's so cool how they can create photorealistic things out of on the computer. But I had just kind of thought it was cool for the longest time. But in high school, I took a CAD class, and we started off doing just drawing by by hand with pencil. But then the third level of that class introduced us to SolidWorks, and I remember seeing,
gosh, what kind of school you
I
were
remember
in?
seeing an older, I remember seeing an older student like rotating a cube on the screen in SolidWorks, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So that was sort of my first introduction to 3D, and then through that I discovered that there's more like mesh modeling type softwares like Blender, 3ds Max, Maya at the time were popular, still are to a certain degree, and I got really interested in that. So and then I guess that all sort of led me to study industrial design in college, and that's when I started picking up Blender, mostly just for fun, just kind of doing silly things in it. But really started to develop a passion for 3D in college, and sort of just stuck with Blender all through then, and then worked in the industrial design field for a little bit outside college, and then sometime after that kind of decided that I didn't actually want to do product design, but what I was really interested in was making 3D things and using Blender. So a 3D focused background, how I kind of discovered and arrived where I am today.
I'm curious, at that time, the Blender is not well developed at what we're using right now. And assuming a lot of functions would be really challenging to use. And how's your user experience with that type of software? And
Yeah, I don't know exactly what version it was when I started. I should probably figure that out. But it was before 2.5. So the interface kind of looked like pink and brown, and maybe there was some green in there. But it was the UI was all on the bottom of the screen, which was something that was like I don't know what version that was. But when I first used Blender, it would have been about 2008. So whatever version it was at that time. And yeah, it was very, I mean, any 3D software is going to be particularly complex just because you can do so much in it. But yeah, Blender, I didn't, pick it up right away. Many people think like, oh, you've been using Blender for over 10 years, it must take me that long to get good. But, but yeah, back then there weren't nearly as many resources for learning Blender. The interface was even more difficult than it is now, and the software couldn't do as much. But I didn't really need it to do much. I was just making, like I said, kind of silly things for fun in it, at least in high school. So yeah, it was not at all the software it is today. But obviously it's grown into a very powerful and functional piece of software.
Awesome. Just listening the long story of being a Blender artist user, this is so fascinating.
Yes.
So I know I did some research and to understand your business. I know you used to work in a company as a senior designer, right? And now you've been doing your freelance business for about 6 years from now. And how do you think about your freelance lifestyle and impact your 3D skills? Because a lot of my YouTube subscribers really want to know how to become a freelance 3D artist, how to make a living out of it. And would you be able to share something about your freelance lifestyle?
Yeah, and I guess, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences there. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, anybody can be a freelancer, but you won't be a freelancer for very long if you don't have clients. And that's one of the obviously the biggest differences with working at a company versus being freelance. And I wasn't really doing 3D work. I was doing 3D work, but it was much more engineering focused at that job you were referencing, and that was at a furniture company. It wasn't a very glorious job. I was basically doing engineering large conference tables. So, and that's about the end of it. So it wasn't particularly exciting. But as far as moving into freelance, yeah, it was just kind of a slow process of, for me, social media was super instrumental. So building a following on Instagram, but I was sort of seeing what other people were doing, other studios were doing, and I was starting to try to replicate in my own personal projects and sharing those things on Instagram and not so much LinkedIn at the time, though LinkedIn now I think is a really good tool for that. But Instagram, Behance, I even tried posting some work on Dribble at one point when I thought I wanted to be a UI designer, but that obviously didn't work out. But yeah, as far as freelancing, moving into that, I just leaned a lot on my past connections. So people who knew me from my previous jobs and connections I had met, particularly in the furniture industry, which is what I was working in. They would leave the company that I was at with them, and they would start their own things, and basically just getting people to know that Derek does 3D things. And once that's kind of established in people's heads, I started to get a little bit of traction with people reaching out to have me do some work for them. And, eventually also through social media, Instagram in particular, started getting, DMs about people looking for help doing things. And, fortunately my wife had a stable full-time job at the time. So it was a little less scary to take the leap, but eventually just felt like I had enough. I was feeling confident in my skills and abilities, but then also, I thought I had maybe enough clients to get me through, at bare minimum. If anything, I just would, have to eat rice and beans for a couple of months, but that it would work out. And that was sort of the jump, I guess, if that's kind of what you're asking about
Yeah,
from.
yeah. I feels like from the other side of what we seeing as subscriber, as audience, we feels like, oh, Derek has a clear path. Like, oh, he's just doing his YouTube thing. He got his everything website up, and that he's just getting making money as a freelancer. But apparently, you went through all these testing and went doing different platform, trying to getting your hands on to the job, to networking. So this is not that easy. I'm just thinking, well, I want to be a freelancer. I can make it work. So it's a
Mhm.
lot of hard work from this side.
Yeah, and I mean, and beyond just the skills, which I think a lot of people consider, as soon as their portfolio is starting to look good, they're kind of thinking they're ready to do freelance. But freelance is definitely, it's a business, and sometimes I don't even like to call it freelance. It's running your own business, because there is so much else that comes with it beyond just doing the work. So that's one thing that I think people don't necessarily realize, where like they see, oh, this person's out there freelance, and they're getting $5,000 for a project, whereas maybe you're working internally at a company and you're making $20 an hour or something like that, and you're thinking, wow, I would make so much more money if I just went out on my own. But then you're forgetting all the other work that goes into it, getting the client, managing the project, just sending emails, setting up phone calls. So there's a huge side of freelance work that's not actually doing the work, and you kind of have to enjoy doing that as well. And I do, but that's another thing that shouldn't be overlooked, is that when you decide to go freelance, a big part of being successful is just being able to have a conversation with a potential client And it's not even like selling them, but just being able to understand their needs, and if it's something, if the project is something that you can actually help them with.
No, it was, yeah, it sounds quite a bit of work from the business side. It's just not only the art creation that we enjoy most. Since you mentioned about the business, I really want to know a little bit more because, like you said, running your freelance business is not just only the production, art creation, it's also the business side of it. Do you feel like your 3D skills or techniques is being limited because you need to take care of the business side of work, or you feels like you become more free to explore or testing onboarding project that you normally wouldn't do if you're working for a design company?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously, if I didn't have to make any money and I was just, sort of in the same phase I was 10 years ago where I was just learning Blender, absorbing content, I think that, you know, by this time I would probably be doing way cooler animations, and I would know how to use, more advanced tools. I definitely know how to use geometry nodes by now. Um, but yeah, I think that if I was able to devote more time to purely developing the craft and purely working on animation, then no doubt the work would be better. So, having to manage some of those other things, just like the business side of it, definitely. I mean, it's time, so it's going to take a little bit away from your ability to actually, keep learning and creating more. But there is also a positive side to that, in that, a lot of times I'll take on a client project and there might be there's one little part of the project that I'm not quite sure how I'll do. And, maybe if it was a personal project, you would just shy away from doing something that you maybe weren't as familiar with. But in the case of a client project, you know, if they want something and you kind of agree with them that, yeah, that probably is the best way to do that, then it sort of becomes your job to figure out how to make that happen. So there's positives to working, in a client relationship as well, in that it sort of pushes you into territory that you might not go on your own.
Sounds like the client work actually help you to push to learn something that force you to. I got to figure this out since I made promise.
Yeah.
That's a different level of pressure and different feeling of learning.
Yeah, and some people thrive under that pressure. Some people don't like it. I can't say I like it, but I do sort of thrive under it. Where, if there's not some external factor like a deadline or a client that, just paying a bunch of money and they're expecting something, having that, um, having that drive to figure it out and get it done, is sometimes really helpful in learning new things. And a lot of the sort of new things that I have learned, especially since I've been freelance, have been driven by working on those client projects and sort of needing to figure out a way to do something that maybe I didn't know how I was going to do at first.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing this. So how we also curious because you're really producing high quality Blender animation videos to help us to learn Blender in the rich high level. And we just curious how do you do to keep yourself to learning and stay up to date with all these quick developments in the Blender community and also the techniques in art in 3D art?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is difficult. I definitely feel like my learning has tapered off a lot. But I also feel like I have a pretty good set of, tools at my disposal now that I've learned over the years. So I don't necessarily feel limited if I'm not on like the bleeding edge of what the latest Blender update is. But I do still try to be up to date on just kind of the latest features. Watching the videos from the Blender Foundation. What they're putting out. Obviously, the landing pages, they always do a really good job of showing kind of what the key new features are, and then also just watching YouTube tutorials. So, I don't follow through with YouTube tutorials very often anymore, but I'm friends with a lot of the other YouTube creators, and I love to see what they're up to. So, a lot of them who are more active than me, I actually just looked today. I haven't made a video in like 45 days, so I'm not as active as I could be. But there are people making so many videos all the time, and anytime I see something interesting, or I'm not sure how something would work, or they've got a really good looking thumbnail, or they post something on Instagram, then I become curious, and I start to wonder how it was done, if it's something I haven't seen before. But yeah, it's sort of just keeping an eye on it, seeing what's happening, and not completely becoming lost in what's new, but also letting myself know that I'm not gonna like completely fall behind if I don't use every new tool and use every new feature, because there's always the old way to do things. A lot of the new features help speed the process up, and as great as that is, if you were able to do it before, you can still do it that way. But yeah, as far as learning and staying up to date with it, yeah, basically the same way anyone would learn from a beginner standpoint, just following tutorials, watching what people are doing, and just sort of slowly absorbing information as it comes out.
Yeah, I can feel that you're really a chill person, and the mindset of learning. You don't need to be rushed for the new one, but you just need to really fully understand where you're going for. Like
Yeah.
you said, the new tools probably just speed up the process. It doesn't mean that's the only way to solving the problem. So
Mhm.
I can see that, and also as an audience, we will know when Derek released a tutorial, it's got to be good because he's doing really good research. You refine the process, explain every detail. So I know for audience, we want to have Derek getting more videos coming out. All tutorial, we love that. But in
Mhm.
realistically, if they're reaching the high quality tutorials like you doing right now on YouTube, it takes time to process, to refine, to getting some stuff out. So good stuff worth time to wait. That
Yeah.
we completely understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And also that is another way that I can learn now. And one thing I realized when I start making YouTube videos is that, as much as I do spend a lot of time figuring out the process and the best way to explain something when I'm making a tutorial, I also, if I do something the slow way or the wrong way, without a doubt, there's somebody who knows a way to do it better, and they'll leave a comment on that. And some other people might see that as a negative thing, like, oh, Derek knows what he's doing, you don't need to correct him, but bring him on. That's another really good way for me to learn, and I would even encourage other people to make videos for that same reason. If you record yourself doing a project, or explaining how to do something, um, you don't necessarily know if there's something that you're spending way longer on that could be done faster, or maybe something's not working as well as it could. But putting yourself out there, and putting your work in front of people is another really good way to just sort of open the world up to your process. And if there is something you can improve on, then the YouTube commenters will be there to help you out.
Yeah, I can totally feel that. I do have a smaller amount of subscribers. I quite understanding the process or the mindset you're going for. Just getting some feedback to people that have better way to do so. Just to let you know, don't take it personal. It just feels like, oh, this is something with a different perspective. I can learn something from others. So
Yeah.
this is very, very smart way to think about to running YouTube. I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm
absolutely.
sure you've experienced the same thing.
Where's your most inspiration from? I know you're saying to be around to see what other YouTubers and also the Blender artists doing, and how's your creative process typically looks like. Especially, we want to know you're doing like your client work because a lot of people want to know how to make a living, how to creating a process.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as inspiration, it's kind of like, you know, it's hard to answer. It sort of comes from everywhere. Just it's hard to pinpoint where exactly an idea comes from. But I mean, for the most part, for me, it's a lot of just sitting down, staring into space, and thinking really hard about it. That I would say, if more of my work fell into, what I would call like an artistic category, then there might be more clear inspiration. But a lot of my work, and when it relates to the client process as well, is more design driven. So I try to approach it with less of an artistic vision, and more design centric. So if I'm doing an animation, then I'm and these are questions that are important to ask the client, but like, what are we really trying to do here? Because just making a product look cool, There might be values to that. Maybe the customer will see, oh, this is a high quality product, or but but it's exactly that. You need to figure out like, why do we want it to look cool, or why do we spin it to the left versus the right, or how long do we spend on this part of it. So kind of coming up with what ends up being the final piece, which you could describe as artistic or beautiful, but how you actually get there is sort of just a really deep thought process in terms of what's the best way to show something, and deciding like how yeah how to best get a message across, whether it's a technical feature of a product, or to show that something's waterproof. How do you show that in a creative way? So um so yeah, I mean, you know even though the work is creative and requires creativity a lot of the times, I really approach it with a sort of as a problem that I'm trying to solve, and that will kind of start to spark creative energy, and things start to take shape when you're really focused on solving a problem.
It feels like your process may focus on to find a sweet spot compared to visually beautiful, pleasing, and also functionally really serving the clients the best way they can possibly do. So I think that is take time and also experience to really get that sweet spot. But you're the way you're thinking. Well, I need to take care of these and that at the same time and finding the
Yeah,
balance. I think that's brilliant. Yes, yes, absolutely.
yeah, and a lot of people will say that my work is, or I have heard before people say that my work is simple, and I think that's a reason for it a lot, is that I'm not spending so much time trying to just pack a scene with assets and put stuff in there and make it look amazing. I'm trying to show that these are the features of this product, and I make that the most important part and the hero, because for my clients, again, they're not paying me to create an animation just because they want a pretty animation that they can put on their fridge. They want to sell more product. So that sort of becomes my job, and that's a way to sort of disconnect yourself a little bit from the creativity, and realize that you're really here to solve a problem, not just make something that looks cool. So I'm more happy knowing that their ad click through rate, as businessy and as boring as it sounds to someone who's more artistically driven. Yeah, my interest is I want to help a client drive more sales to their product, and that's when I know I've done my job well, more so than a bunch of people on Instagram commenting like, "Whoa, that's so cool! How did you do that?"
Yeah, yeah.
I love to talk about that, and I love to do those things too. But for the client, they're not interested in that. They want to know that their product was spoken to the right way, and at the end of the day, they can sell more, or their
See,
business is more
I'm
successful.
a big fan of your work, and I follow your YouTube channels and also look at your all Instagrams, social media. I really love your styles. Keep everything simple, but I gotta tell subscribers or the audience who are watching this make it simple. It doesn't mean it's easy. This is
Mhm.
very critical to let you guys know because you made it animation looks very simple, but in order to make it beautiful, it's so difficult. This is something that need to have years experience to build on the skills and the understanding. You see the mindset. It's not easy. It's simple. I gotta give you credit on that. Do you have any project or collaboration you're going on for this New Year's, and any plans for this year 2023?
Nothing major. I mean, I would. I've been talking about it for the longest time, but I would love to release a course at some point this year. That's something that I'm
Wow,
considering.
courses. We've been chasing for you for courses for a long time.
Yeah,
Okay, good. Keep
and
going.
yeah, and that would be a way to just ideally do a more consolidated. For somebody who doesn't have the time to pick through YouTube and watch all my videos that are hours long. That would be. I don't know exactly what the format of the course would be, but I would want that to be something that is sort of for someone who only has a weekend or two to start picking up Blender, and try to consolidate sort of the best information. So for a lot of people who have followed my tutorials, it might not be anything new in there, but I'm not totally sure how that would take shape. But a course would be something that would be cool. Also, just keeping up, making more YouTube videos, and then yeah, I mean client work. So I have a couple cool projects underway right now, and some other ones on the horizon. I actually had like 3 calls with potential clients today, which is more than normal. People probably think I'm getting flooded with requests, but maybe it's something about this time of the year. Everyone's got their new budgets for 2023, but I'm sure there'll be some cool projects. Who knows what they'll be? Maybe there'll be no projects. The clients will stop knocking, but nothing major to speak of now. I've been doing some little collaborations here and there with some friends the past few months that should be released soon. But yeah, nothing major that I want to talk about in particular. But there's always something going on. If you don't see me putting out YouTube videos, then that usually means that I'm working on client projects.
Awesome, awesome. Really glad to hear that. And also, this is why we call that at the beginning is first forecast or interview, because we are planning to do more, but we wanted to hear some advices from our YouTube subscribers and to give us some feedback so we can start exploring some topics, talking about it. And this is our very first time to doing this type of collaboration, different channels, and also by listening, Derek, you sharing the other side of a business, and also way more different insight compared to the high quality tutorial on YouTube is really going to help a lot of Blender users and also 3D artists who are trying to getting into the field. But by now, we are just going to temporarily stop this forecast for this one single episode because time about 30 minutes. But we will continue finish this conversation in the next episode, and we have a lot of questions going on here to talk with it. So, making sure you subscribe and for Derek's YouTube channel and Instagram, and making sure you leave comments to let us know what you think about this type of format of collaboration. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.
Check out Wenbo as well.
Thank you, Derek.